We're here to protect you and the ones that you love. It's a good feeling to know that our efforts aren't going unnoticed.
It actually brought tears to my eyes to know that we have this support.
You're welcome. I must just say, you're welcome. It's stressful, but we're not going anywhere.
Welcome to another edition of Bucknell Men's Tennis Through the Decades. Tonight we have a special version of the 1970s. Some of the best players to ever step on the court here at Bucknell will be joining head coach Bruce Myers, along with one of our current student athletes, senior captain Marwan Abaza. Marwan is a senior from Boca Raton, Florida. We're very happy that he's able to join us on the call tonight. My name is Todd Newcomb, and I want to thank Geisinger as our sponsor for tonight's session. Geisinger has done a great job throughout the pandemic, and as always, they do a super job with our student athletes here at Bucknell on a daily basis. So thank you to Geisinger. Let me introduce our guest, and then I'll turn it over to Coach, and we'll get our session going here. Our first guest from the class of 1971 is Alex Anderson. He was the team captain during the 70-71 season. He went 38-2 in singles competition during his Bucknell career to rank third all time with a 95% win rate. His overall tennis record of 66-8 ranked second all time with an 89% win rate, and he was inducted into the Bucknell Athletics Hall of Fame in 1999. Our second guest from the class of 1972 is Steve Baird. He was the team captain during the 71-72 season. He went 38-1 in singles competition during his Bucknell career to rank first all time with a 97% win rate. He went 31-2 in doubles competition, and he ranks first all time there as well with a 94% win rate. And his overall tennis record of 69-3 ranks first, as you might imagine, with an all-time win rate of 96%. He won the Christy Mathewson Award at the Athletic Department Senior Awards Dinner, and Steve was inducted into the Bucknell Athletics Hall of Fame in 1983. Our next guest, also from the class of 1972, is Jim Lackritz. Jim was the team captain during the 71-72 season. He went 38-3 in singles competition during his Bucknell career to rank fourth all time with a 93% win rate. His overall tennis record of 65-8 ranks third all time, having won 89% of his matches at Bucknell. Our next guest from the class of 1973 is Bob Christensen. He was a two-year letter winner for the Bison. He went 7-8 in singles, including a 6-2, 6-1 win at the 71 MAC championships, and he was 5-3 in doubles play during his Bison career. Our next guest from the class of 1975 is Casey Jones. He was the team captain during both the 73-74 and 74-75 seasons. He went 37-12 in singles competition during his Bucknell career to rank ninth all time with a 76% win rate. He also went 36-10 in doubles competition, winning 78% of his matches there, which ranks third all time. His overall tennis record of 73-22 ranks sixth all time with a 77% win rate. So, Coach, we've got some of the very best on this call. Let's have a good time.
Thanks, Todd. Yeah, it's interesting. This is halfway through my fifth season at Bucknell, and obviously I've dealt with a lot of former players and alum, but this group here not only was probably, and it'd be tough to say arguably, the most successful group of men's tennis players at Bucknell history, but do the best job of staying in touch with me and my former players, and so I appreciate that, wholeheartedly. I know more about the Lax Baird, Chris, this team I just know really well, and it's been fun to not only hear the stories, but I think my players have enjoyed meeting you guys and hearing and just hearing Lack tell his stories of knowing every point that he's ever played in his college career is amazing. So, so what I'll do is, if you can, I'll go around, I'll call your name and just give me an update, like on your life after Bucknell, what you're doing, you're married, kids, grandkids, what you're working, just so everyone can get an idea. So we'll start with Steve. Steve.
Yeah, I'm living here in Rye, New York, still stay active in helping recruit for Bucknell. Had two recruits who became captain in the last 15 years, so love that part of it. Had a long career in human resources, human capital on Wall Street. So I'm very focused on the people side. And lately I've been doing, for the last decade, career coaching and leadership coaching, one-on-one.
Great. Let's go to Jim.
Sorry, I had to unmute. Yeah, after Bucknell, I went to graduate school at University of Florida, got a master's and PhD degree in statistics, moved out to San Diego in 1977 to join the faculty at San Diego State University. I was full-time for 33 years. My last 5.5 years, I was associate dean of the College of Business. And then I retired, did a half-time for 5 years, and I've been teaching one course a year in the program, and I'm a co-founder of what they call the national, it's well known, the sports MBA program at San Diego State. I'm married. I got married in 1978 to my girlfriend from University of Florida. We have 2 kids that live in Toronto and Seattle, and 3 grandchildren. I've been playing all the way through. I played competitive senior tennis until 2006. I had knee replacement then, and I still play a couple days a week. And that's pretty much where I'm at.
Awesome. Alex, let's switch it. We'll switch it to Casey and we'll come back to you, Alex. Casey Jones.
All right. So after graduating from Bucknell, I taught tennis full time as a teaching professional until 1980.
How about that?
Perfect. Go ahead, Alex.
Did that work?
Yes.
There you go. All right, back to Alex. Alex, how are you? We got it.
Can anyone hear me?
Yes, you're good. Can you hear us?
The answer is yes.
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 Okay, good. I'm sorry. I didn't bring my glasses with me, so I couldn't see the darn phone. But no, I was just saying. Biggest news of my life is I just became a grandfather about 30 days ago.
Oh,
To a
congratulations.
beautiful little girl called Ella. And going a little further back, I graduated from Bucknell in 1971 and got a job with U.S. Trust and then Citibank. Citibank, thanks to Steve. And I spent most of my career working for big banks. I retired after Bank of America got acquired by Nations Bank in 1998, and I've been helping people with their investments since then. I mostly play golf now. I hurt my shoulder, so I really can't play tennis, but I enjoy tennis, and I very much am enjoying getting together with all of you guys. So thank you.
Alex, where are you calling us from? Alex. All right, let's go to Casey. Casey, back to you.
All right. So 1980, I got married, switched careers and became a financial advisor with Northwestern Mutual. And I'm now in my 41st year with Northwestern. I had 3 daughters and I have 3 grandchildren. As you've heard before, I've continued to play tennis very actively throughout my life. And then, of course, sharing that in the winter with paddle tennis. Have played tournaments throughout. And here I am now, kind of backing off a little bit in the work and playing more and more tennis and paddle. Been very lucky with my body. Other than 2 meniscus procedures, I'm all intact. So I've been very lucky that way.
That's awesome. And last but certainly not least, Bob Christensen.
Thanks, Bruce. After hearing about all you guys' ailments, you should have got fat and happy like I did. You wouldn't have had any stitches, surgeries, or anything. I quit playing competitive tennis at about age 28. I only do mountain biking now. Anyway, after Bucknell, I got an MBA along with Steve's brother-in-law at George Washington, then moved to San Diego. Was in mortgage banking for about 14 years. But as soon as I quit playing tennis, which was about age 28, I immediately got into tennis officiating. I did a lot of local stuff initially, high school, college. In '82, I went to my first U.S. Open, and I've gone to every one since until this year when COVID and Hawkeye got the best of us. So for the most part, since I've been about 40 years old, I've been a full-time tennis official, all levels, USTA Nationals, high school. I do a lot of top level college, UCLA, USC, ATP, WTA, WTT, ITF, anything with initials, I do it. I've gotten to travel probably to about 18 or 20 different countries doing Davis Cup assignments. I'm not sure where my future lies in tennis officiating because Hawkeyes seems to make inroads in that area, but there'll always be college and local stuff around. And in San Diego, you can just about officiate any day of the week all year round. Good to see all you guys. Great memories. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. And Bob has had the pleasure, I should say, of probably doing, I think, 2 of our matches out in California, I think, right? At least 1, if not 2.
I did 1. Now our coordinator says there's a conflict of interest.
Yes, I know. And I think, I can't believe we snuck you in there. You were very fair, though, if I recall correctly.
My point was they were paying me and I went to Bucknell. So
yeah, there you go. It's a
that's
win-win.
fair. Anyway.
All right. So then my second round of questions would be just a little background on how you came to Bucknell, whether you were recruited, whether you were a walk-on, whether tennis played a role, who recruited you. I'll go back around and start with Steve again.
Yeah, I was a captain of baseball and shortstop at the gunnery school, and I was a walk-on in tennis, and I saw the opportunity to, make the team, and that's really how I got on the team. My mother had gone to Bucknell, and I had Bucknell and Tufts, and it was a pretty easy decision. It's just because of Lewisburg, how beautiful it is, and so that's how I got to school, and that's how I got to play tennis. And we also had, at that stage, Lack can tell you, there was a phenomenal group that just joined at the same time. There was another guy who was just as good as Lack and I, who only lasted a year, our freshman year, who could have, I don't know how good the 1970 team would have been with him, because he was a top 3 player, I would say. Richard Kramer, remember him, Lack and Alex? Do you remember that guy?
I remember Richard, sorry.
Yeah, he was my roommate freshman year. And unfortunately, he got disenchanted with school and quit going to classes. Yeah. And after making 3 Fs and a D, I believe is second semester, and he couldn't understand how he got the D, he was asked to remove himself from the university and not invited back. And I think it was a mutual decision.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
How about you, Lack? How did you end up at Bucknell?
I was basically a walk-on. I couldn't have even told you who the coach was when I came. I was a decent high school player, but not really that good. And at the beginning of my senior year in high school, I was totally unrecruited and 5'7" and 120 pounds. And my senior year, I grew 3 inches and put on about 25 pounds. And I won my league singles championship, which on a very good league, beating, as an unseeded player, beating the 3 top seeded players. And that's when my game started to go. And so all of a sudden I started hearing from some D3 schools in Ohio, like Ohio Wesleyan and Muskingum, but I'd already applied to Bucknell, and my mother insisted that I was going to go to a top flight, strong academic school. So literally when I got to campus, I definitely wanted to play tennis, but I couldn't have even told you that Hank Peters was our coach. But my roommate Dick was also a tennis player. So we went out to hit, and Dave Gordon, who was captain of the team my freshman year, saw us and introduced us to Hank, and the story goes on from there.
Wow. Right. Alex, what's your background?
I was like Lack, was a little bit of a late mature. I only played on the varsity team at my high school, but I was getting big my senior year and having some pretty good success, even beating some people on the varsity. And I got a letter from Hank Peters and said, he wanted me to come to Bucknell, and I wanted to go to a good school, and so that's how it happened, and I'm very glad that it did.
Awesome. Casey, how did you end up at Bucknell? Nope, mute. Casey, you're on mute.
All right, so I played tournaments throughout my childhood, starting at 12 years old. Really stopped when I was 17 to start working, and but I did get letters, and I got accepted to Notre Dame and Army and Lehigh, and then I went to Bucknell. It was on the list, but Bucknell was the last one I saw. And the second I walked on campus, I said, this is the place I want to go. And I wrote, I did my life's history on the application. And then lo and behold, I got waitlisted. And the second I opened that waitlisted, I got on the phone and called the coach and said, can you get me in? And then he went back to my application, and a week later I was in and I went.
Who was the coach there when you were?
Coach Reynolds.
Because and we'll get back to this, but Hank passed away. What year was that?
The
Summer of 70.
70, I think.
Summer of 71.
Yeah.
70. I
70.
graduated.
Summer
No,
70.
71.
Right. Okay.
71.
I think this was Coach Reynolds' first year, if
Right.
I'm not mistaken.
Okay. That would make sense.
And
Also the
much
soccer
to
coach.
his defense, he was also the varsity soccer coach.
Right.
So applications in the fall just wasn't, that just
The
went
highest
for
priority.
tennis.
Right.
So
Oh, that's great. And Chris, how about you? How did you end up at Bucknell?
As the oldest of 5 children, my parents weren't well versed in college admissions, so I applied to 24 schools. Bucknell was the only place I got in. No, just kidding. I was torn between Colgate, Franklin and Marshall, and Bucknell. I went up to Colgate, and I think it was early December. Freezing cold, windy, and no girls there at that point.
Right.
They were not co-ed. Franklin and Marshall, a little too small. I just fell in love with the Bucknell campus. Hank took me out to lunch. I was number 2 on my high school team on a very competitive tennis area. I didn't know where I stood. I think we had 33 freshmen who had played high school tennis.
Wow.
So I didn't know where I'd stand in the mix, but it was obvious from the beginning that I was one of the better ones. And some of these kids obviously had played on very poor teams in small areas. But with Keith, the number 1 player in my class, and then I was 2. So I went to Bucknell, was very happy, was fraternity oriented. Through Steve and Alex, they inspired me to go Kappa Sig. And no regrets at all. Wonderful school.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
That's great. I've heard many, many stories from all of you, but if you guys could sum up your most memorable story, hopefully tennis related, that means you too, Chris. What was your most memorable story or thing that happened at Bucknell? So we'll back to Steven.
Yeah, I'll go with the 1970 undefeated team. We're up at Colgate. It's early April, and we're about 45 minutes into the match, 30 minutes maybe. Snow starts coming down, and then literally you had a quarter of an inch of snow, and we're still playing. And their coach, a guy named Joe Abramson, was a fanatical, schemer and stacker, and so he did not want to call the match because he thought he was going to win. And he moved the match inside to play on wood. And they had 2 wooden courts going, and we had to finish all the singles matches and the doubles. So Alex was there, Lack was there, but for me, because I was playing against their captain, we're playing on wood. It was like bizarre, and we beat him. We beat him. I think it was 5-4 or 6-3. Lack, do you remember what
Lack will
happened?
know.
We beat him 6-3, I think.
6-3, yeah. But for me, just because of the competitiveness of playing against this particular guy who was a real tough, hard-nosed guy, his name was John Ornstein, I think. But bottom line is, that's my most memorable match. It was just the strangest thing. But as Chris said, that's Colgate. That year up in Hamilton, New York, and we stayed overnight there. So we stayed over, I think. Didn't we stay over, Lack? Before the match or after the match, or maybe I can't think.
We had played Syracuse the day before, and then we drove to Colgate, and then we stayed overnight at Colgate, and then played the match, and then drove back after the next day.
Brilliant. I don't know how you remember this stuff, Lack. But that's mine, Coach. That's my favorite moment.
That's awesome.
Lack is right. I'm checking the schedule. I have it in writing. Amazing, Lack.
Of course he's right. So this is what, Jim, so give me the most memorable tennis related story of your time at Bucknell. I'm curious to hear this one.
It's, God, there's so many of them. I wish we had about 10 hours for me to tell the stories, but probably the one which stands out in my mind is senior year. We have a powerhouse team, and Steve hurts his back about 6 or 7 matches at the end of the season. So I'm playing number 1, and it's not an issue, but we go to Ryder and Ryder is our competition for the league title, and we haven't lost a league match in 3 years, 4 years, something like that. But we're playing 1 down with the best player in the history of the school who's not there. And I'm playing number 1 against Rich Stranskoff, who was the conference number 1 runner-up to Steve. Steve had beaten him in the finals of the fall, and I had won the number 2 singles, and I had beaten their hotshot new freshman, and I had beaten them bad. And there's a little controversy, which I'm not even going to talk about the story, but we go to Ryder, and they are totally out for blood against us. And they must have let their school out early to come boo me on court number 1 and the foot fault and everything else. Casey was there, and I'm sure he's going to remember Chris was there too. So this kid is out for blood, and he is just taking me to the cleaners, and I'm down 6-4, 5-3, and he's serving for the match. And I break his serve, and it starts to sprinkle. And so we get called inside, and we have about an hour rain delay, and I get my act together, and we go back out, and I beat him tiebreaker in the second set and 1 break for 6-4 in the third. And basically turned and said a couple of unmentionable words to the crowd and flipped one of my non-index fingers and a few other things. And it was fun until we lost the match. So it was probably one of the best moments and the worst moments because we lost the team match that day too. But wow. Anyway, that's probably my most memorable one.
Thanks, Jim. Alex.
Well, we had some pretty good teams, but I think the match that I remember the most actually wasn't an official match. It was a spring trip match, and we played Navy. And I don't think we had ever beaten Navy. And I remember we played it in a very, very severe crosswind. So it made conditions really, really tough. And I don't remember who won what in the match, but I do remember that overall we won 5-4. And Coach Peters was so delighted about that he put a decal on the side of his car saying, L5, Navy 4, we beat them. Wow. And that was pretty cool. And because, like playing in the snow at Colgate, you wouldn't want to play in conditions like we were playing that day. You'd be aiming outside the doubles line and the wind would blow it back in. So, great.
Wow.
The other thing I would say is that I don't think my shoulder ever stopped hurting during my Bucknell tennis career because we were shoveling snow in March and playing 40-degree weather in April, and by the time it warmed up in May, we were pretty much done with our matches.
Right.
So I won't say that it's been sore ever since, but almost.
Casey, what's your most memorable tennis-related experience at Bucknell?
Probably pretty easy. We went down to Delaware to play for the conference championship, and we were down 4-2 after the singles. I did win my singles match, and then we swept all 3 doubles in 3 sets in each match to win the conference championship, and that was really, really, stood out for me. And since everybody's talking about snow, I remember we had a southern trip down to Maryland and Wake Forest. And at Wake Forest, we started the match 28 degrees in snow flurries. And that was our spring trip.
Right. Wow. Chris, most memorable tennis experience at Bucknell?
Initially, I'd like to say I have no idea why I'm included with this group of players. I used to kid myself that I would lose more matches in a week than this group would lose in their entire 4 years. And now I realize I wasn't exaggerating. God has to mention that my lifetime singles record was 7-8. But anyway, I want to go back to my freshman year where I played on the last freshman team in Bucknell history, actually in NCAA history, because from there on, like with KC, freshmen could then go on to play varsity if they were good enough. But people don't recall that although the varsity was 16-0, our freshman team in 1970 was 4-0. Now, 4 doesn't sound like much, but 2 of those wins were against Penn State, one at home, one on the road. And in my time at second singles on the freshman team, I had my best win ever, I thought, against Penn State's number 2 at Lewisburg. Now, the varsity was off somewhere else, but I was in the zone that day. So even I had one day of glory.
Nice. Thanks. I think Marwan, I was going to ask, you have a question to ask?
Yes, sir. I have a few questions to ask. Thank you guys again for coming today. I guess my first question, as a transfer and for my other teammates who are coming in as freshmen, what advice would you give about the college tennis experience at Bucknell specifically? And what is the best way or the most important skill that you picked up that helped you transition the best you could? And I guess we'll start with Steve again.
Yeah, I guess in terms of advice, I mean, I think you have to learn skills, discipline, preparation. You have to learn there really aren't any shortcuts. So you really have to manage your time well, which is probably the thing that I learned very well. We were also living through a period when there's a lot of drugs on campus back in the 70s with all the hippie stuff. So I learned to actually tell my fraternity brothers, I'm an athlete, stay away, do not. And I literally, it was that sort of era. So I learned to push back and carve my own space out so I could do my thing. So that's what I'd recommend.
Good advice. We'll go to Casey.
I would echo with Steve. It really taught me discipline, to be organized, because inevitably we would have a 4-hour travel match that would take the whole day, and 8 o'clock the next morning you're doing a test. And so you really had to be disciplined and plan ahead for the schedule and for your academics. The other thing is just enjoy the moment, because it just goes like that. I mean, 4 years, and just enjoy every moment. It's truly a treasure.
I'm sad. I don't know how I got to the 4th year so quick, but we'll go with Jim.
Yeah, and I totally agree with what Steve and Casey said. For me, I think the what I really remember is the camaraderie of our team and the teamwork that we went through. I walked into a Hall of Fame team, and the opportunity to embrace in practice every single day, to go against the 2 best players in the history of the program, and Mark Poses and Wheeler Neff, and then all of a sudden Keith and Chris come, and then Casey, and what I learned to be able to just share information and to learn from my teammates going back and forth. Some of that was because Hank was very helpful for me for my first 2 years, but when he died, we had a situation where Craig was kind of new to the tennis scene. So being able to, instead of carping on each other, because we're all incredibly competitive and our practices were probably 3 times harder than most of our matches. But what I remember is the team experience and having a chance to play and to improve by going against really good players every single day and just trusting that the system itself would work. And even when I got to the point of being an upper level player, being able to hopefully pass down some of that to the players that were a little lower on the team, but also to take advantage of having the resources for even the kids that weren't playing to go out and to be able to work with them where I could go hit just a bunch of volleys or overheads or service returns and to make them a part of the team and to make them an important part of what we were doing.
Alex?
Well, again, I agree with what everyone has previously said. In terms of succeeding, it helped to take easy courses to some extent. And I'm sure that no longer exists at Bucknell. But I think what I enjoyed though was the competition, both the the team match competition, but then as Jim alluded to, just playing every day with against great players. And I'm reminded of the story that I am fond of about Hank Peters. And I have no idea whether it was my sophomore year or junior year or whatever, but I had won the first set, lost the second. We had a break. I went up to Coach Peters and say, Hank, what am I doing wrong? And he said, you're losing. And that was it. I think clearly, being able to use your time well, not getting distracted. The other distraction, of course, from the early 70s was the potential of people getting drafted. I remember at our fraternity, they had a lottery system, and everyone's birthday was drawn out of a hat. And no one obviously wanted to be in the top 180. And actually, my number came up 243. But besides the drugs and the academics and so forth, I think people were pretty fearful that they're going to have to do something that they really didn't want to do. But enjoy the experience is what I would say. It goes by very, very quickly, and just relish it.
Definitely will. I'll try to take some easier classes next semester.
Yes, please.
And last but not least, Bob.
Uh-oh. Where do I begin? All 4 of you guys mentioned the fact that you had the ability to be disciplined, to push back, to focus. I did that for 2 years. The last 2 years were anything but. I gave in. I partied. I got in with a fun crowd. My tennis sank. I gave less effort my junior and senior years than any other time I've ever been around tennis, to be candid. And I ended up quitting the team after my junior year. But for 2 years, I loved the camaraderie. I made a lot of good friends. I keep up with probably 50 or 60 Bucknellians even today. Great bunch of guys. I hardly met anybody who ever went to Bucknell I didn't like. Wonderful bunch. Fun, focused, classy, smart. And if they hung around with me, fun, I hope. Thanks.
Thank you. That was really good. I was gonna save this question, but I'm curious. I want to ask this one first. I'm sitting here with a Zoom call of, I'd like to say, in my opinion, the most successful tennis team of our Bucknell tennis program. And I think this semester and next semester we have a strong, talented team, and hopefully we can make a shot at the Patriot League title. But I want to ask your advice as winners. I think I can safely say you're all winners. What is the number one or a few reasons that you guys were able to win the most? And I know it's not just because you're talented. So there's more reasons that in the practices and what you guys did leading up to the matches. And we'll start with Bob again.
Wow, I'm not ready. As I said, I was just taking a breather. What was the question?
what is the number one winning thing the thing that you guys did in practice that led to you guys winning so much?
You talking to the right guy here?
Anyone?
Freshman year, I was very good. Sophomore year, I was fair. We had an exceptionally good bunch of players. Why did we win? Well, we were better than everybody else. But aside from that, I think we had good team chemistry, good coaching, good support from the administration, a fairly good travel budget. I can't think of anything else. But again, wow, I can't pinpoint one thing. Thank you.
All good. It's all good. Those were good ones. Thank you. Alex.
First of all, it's not an easy question, but I would just say that the ability to compete, and I think that's a lesson that can be applied much, well beyond your tennis career. But I watched Steve play many matches where I'm not so sure that he was, quote, more talented than the other player, but Steve had this amazing ability to compete and take advantage of his strengths and play the game, play the match the way he wanted to play it, as opposed to allowing someone else to dictate what was going on. So I think that's a really important capacity to have. And I think most of us were really good competitors. We may not, silly things, but tennis, they say, certainly at the level we played, is a game of who's making the fewest errors. And so clearly not giving things away was really, really important. And I think actually Steve and I were all serve and volley, which you don't see much in tennis anymore. But kind of the mentality was, we all had good serves. We're all going to get up to net, and you're going to have to hit it by us because we're not going to make a whole lot of mistakes. So I guess in a nutshell, just the, learning to compete is something that doesn't come automatically, but I think it's very important and beyond tennis.
Definitely. Thank you. We'll go to Jim.
Yeah, I don't know that there's one specific thing, but what I know is I was in a group of colleagues that were great teammates, but they hated to lose, and I hate to lose in anything. And Steve was the same way, and Alex was a little quieter, but he hated to lose. And so at practice, when we would go against each other, it was really, really, really intense. And there were times where it was probably illegal, but Hank would literally bet us and put us against each other. So he'd go, Lackritz, I'll bet you $1 you can't beat Anderson, or a drink or a soda. And then he'd turn around and he'd go, Alex, I'll bet you $1 you can't beat Lackritz, or a soda, whatever it was. And so we're sitting there, and Hank's now out of it, but we're competing like crazy. And Steve was I thought I was the most ultra competitive person, that, the type A and everything else. But when I played Steve didn't want to ever lose a point. He was the most, and I think that rubbed off on me. Not to take a point lightly, just when you have someone step on their throat. And I think all of that was part of our teamwork and the way that we really competed, but we competed to help each other out and to make everybody better. And so that's kind of, the way that I see it and remember it.
Thank you. Casey.
Yeah, as a freshman, I have to say that Steve, and he doesn't know, it really rubbed off on me. There was nobody in the world tougher mentally than Steve, period. And his record at Bucknell showed it. And it's that Steve, it very rarely happened, but Steve, if he had a horrible shot, you'd never know it, because he just went right to the other side of the court and started the next point. And that's the mental toughness to let it go. and lose a few games and not let it bother you and just stick to the task at hand and just displaying that mental toughness and never letting your opponent inside your head. You know, I wasn't as good at that, especially my first couple of years. I tend to get a little mad at myself, but Steve never did. And when you're playing an opponent like that, it's really tough. And I'm sure that you've had opponents that you just, you know, they won't crack. And so that's, I think, the real X factor in playing tennis, and just to just be able to keep on keeping on and not let it bother you. And especially at the way you guys play now, it's such a fast-paced game, much faster than what we did in our heyday. But it still applies. And I'm still under the belief. I watch a lot of the singles, and I watch them compete, and you really understand the game and understand what it takes. It's not just hitting the ball 1,000 miles an hour, but setting up your opponent. And again, I'll point to Steve and say he was just the master of it with that backspin backhand. I mean, it was just, it was clockwork, and that's what it's all about.
And now let me ask the guy that everyone's been talking about, Steve. What's your opinion on this?
Yeah, thank you everybody for that. I would start with every match in practice I treated as a real match. And I think Alex and Lack and touched on this. So we loved each other. Our team did have great chemistry, and we did really love each other. But we went out and practiced our pants off, and we competed. I can remember one time I lost to Alex Anderson when he was a senior and I was a junior in a practice match. And I went home to the apartment that we were renting, and I was so mad, I kicked the thing, and I had to put a poster over the wall. It's the first time I ever told this story. But Alex beat me, and he beat me fair and square. But it was a practice match. So if you don't do that, you don't have a chance for greatness. And you guys, because I've studied the coaching roster, which has come in with this class, and I hope you really get to play after COVID, because it's going to be a heck of an opportunity. I think Bucknell is not going to be a semifinal in the Patriot League Championship. I think you're going to be a finalist, and I think you're going to have a real shot at pulling it off if this new group is as good as, you know, we hope. Those are some of my thoughts. I think the concept of competitive fire is really important. You know, if you're going to be playing in college, you better have competitive fire, and it better mean something to you. Otherwise, you shouldn't be on the team. You're wasting a slot for somebody else. And the other thing that I think that we've been talking about is the focus. I mean, you have to somehow focus, your focus capacity has to be so strong that you can get in a zone. And that zone is your zone during that match, right? And you may not be in anything the whole time, but if you are focused and you don't even notice anything about what's going on around, in the stands, on the court, off the court. So, and then the last thing from my years of playing platform tennis, my brother and I invented this term when we were out running 1 August, and the season doesn't really start till October. And he invented the term, there are no shortcuts, right? So even the first time we played our arch rivals in a practice match up in Boston, and they were our friends, and then we all went running around the track, I made sure that I would beat the guys when we were running around the track. The last lap, I just ran around, and it paid off because we beat them in the nationals. That was my first national championship, but they saw what it meant, and I did it on purpose. So they knew up in Boston, around this track after we had a practice session, and we're all jogging the last lap in the mile, I turned it on and beat them by 50 yards, 100 yards, and I did it for a reason. So you have to have some techniques. The last thing I would say is you also have to have a strategy versus each guy. So Marwan, if I was to play you now, I'd probably lose love and love. But if we were to play on equal terms, I would have studied you. I would have watched you every second I could. And I know exactly what my strategy was going in, even though I had never played you before. I would have asked around. So if you really want excellence, you really have to invent all these techniques that are your own personal philosophies. And so I guess that's what I can offer for this year's team, because I think you guys are going to win the championship. I really do. I didn't make that up. I do. You've got a shot at it. So you're the leader. So you have to think about what you're going to do to keep, not only be a role model, but keep everybody fired up with the team chemistry. The last thing I want to say is Lack was also an inspiration to me. And I want to tell you one story. He was an all-around athlete. And when the school had a race around the whole campus, it's about a 2.5, 3 mile race. We came out because we knew Lack could be able to compete for this. This is the whole school except for people that were on the cross-country team, but anybody who had dropped off the country team could race in it. Lack came in second, and we were all there to support him. And we were so proud that he was the second fastest runner in the whole school, and he hadn't run one race the whole year. But that's how tight we were, right? And Chris told you about Lack helping him with his homework. So it's the chemistry and the love for the team and the people on the team.
That is really good advice from everybody. Thank you. I have one last question, if you don't mind. It won't be as deep and as mind-opening, but thank you for that. Thank you very much. I'm hopefully going to pass this down to my teammates. What advice do you have in terms of just networking and, off the court, finding the right job after graduating Bucknell? And for everybody else on my team in terms of just getting internships as well, like what is the best steps to do for that? We'll start with Jim. Let's start with Jim.
Okay, I'm going to come from a more academic. I've been teaching in a business school for 40 plus years. And you guys are in a situation right now which is unique and totally different from anything that the rest of the country and the alumni have ever experienced. So I would suggest to start out with, I think the networking is critical, and it's a really, really important part. But I would sit down and start to do a self-analysis or recommend a self-analysis. What do I do well? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What do I really want to do? What do I really don't want to do? And I would consider writing literally a strategic plan and if you're not a business major, maybe that doesn't make sense, but you can kind of learn a little bit about that. And Alex and Steve and Chris and Casey are probably, I'm sure, all familiar with that. In terms of looking at your life and where you want to be a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, short term, longer term, and how you intend to get there. And it's not going to work out perfectly, but you've got to have your goals and set them out in front of you. And it's not just a matter of, God, I hope I get a good job, but I think it's more of kind of doing a little bit of thinking out to the future on what do I really want to do and love to do. But short term, what am I going to have to do in the next year, 2 years, 3 years until we get into a better economic situation, which would put me in a position to maybe chase my dreams and be able to do the things which I really love, which are really at the high end of my plan.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's hear from Bob.
Who is that?
Let's hear from you, if we could. In terms of networking and finding, like, what are your advice for finding, planning out your career after graduation?
There's an old adage that goes something like this. Old people are always asking young people what they want to do with their lives. And you know what the answer is? Because the old people don't have a clue. I'm one of those kind of guys. I've never really had a plan, never really had direction. I float, I have fun. Candidly, I never got a girl pregnant, which helps my financial situation. I've been married once and divorced. I'm a free spirit. San Diego is a perfect environment for that. On paper, financially, I look very successful only because San Diego real estate will make us all look very successful. And getting back to the serious nature of the question, in terms of networking, doesn't hurt to marry a Bucknell girl. There's usually a good connection there. And there's a few of us that probably regret doing that. I'm referring to you here, Steve, by the way. I'm just nitpicking a little bit at Steve. But anyway, you'll do fine. I saw you play that tennis match at, who was it? Mesa College last spring. You got a lot of charisma, Marin. You're poised. You speak well. You're going to be a very successful kid. And I'm sure your parents are very proud of you. So you'll succeed. Don't worry about it. Life is longer than you might realize at this point. But all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I guess we'll go to Alex.
Well, yeah, recognize you have an expert in career counseling in Steve. He does it still professionally. So anything I say, probably listen to a little bit, but listen to him a lot. But just one piece of advice. I remember when I was either my junior or senior year, I took an aptitude test, and basically sort of what do I like to do versus what's required in a particular job, and I was told that a job where I'm working with people, what wouldn't have been good was a job that was all numbers oriented or research or that kind of thing, and that sort of helped me get into a career that was with people, but helping people. So I would, presumably the university has something like that, or at least can make a recommendation as to where you might have that sort of evaluation. But I found it very helpful, and I think it would still be helpful.
Definitely. Yeah, I actually took one of those, and they're really helpful. It's
what did it say?
It said it's a little bit biased because I know at the time I was like, I do want to work in finance. So when it asked like a question, I was like, are you interested in business and management? I was like, yes. But for the most part, it said I was like.
I think, Martin, I think it came back and said you want to stay for a 5th year. And,
yes, that's what it said.
And use your extra year of eligibility at Bucknell.
I mean, I hope I can do that.
Coach is hoping.
I guess we'll go to Steve again.
Yeah, I think a lot of people brought really good things. I agree with Jim. You have to figure out what your strengths are. You have to really reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out to the Bucknell. Do your homework. Find out who at Bucknell is in the sort of directions that you're thinking about, and reach out to them. I can't tell you how many kids I've who have reached out to me. I always try to help them. You don't necessarily have to get your perfect job out of the box, but I do think you should try to join a world-class organization. That you may not be in the job that your dreams are, because it's very tough to get into asset management or whatever, the way Alex did, but he joined Citibank, which was a world-class organization. And from there, everything clicked. So yeah, I do think you have to do homework, though. Anytime you're going to go in for interviews, you have to know a lot about that company, the leadership of the company and their strategies, just so you can demonstrate how serious a candidate you are. But yeah, I mean, those are just some quick thoughts, and I agree with Chris. I think you're gonna do fine. You're gonna have a great career.
Hopefully. Please don't be too nice. I haven't done anything yet. Well, I did actually, Casey, before I ask you, I did actually work at Northwestern Mutual for a year.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that was my first internship. But
awesome.
And who was that with?
What?
Who was that with?
It was in the Striano Financial Group in Boca Raton.
Oh, okay. Not familiar with them, but I would say, of course, echoing on Jim and Steve, how can I not? But go with your gut. I taught tennis, but I knew that was not going to be my career when I graduated from Bucknell, but I just wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I knew that I didn't want to do that, even though I enjoyed it. I loved doing it. And when the opportunity came, I knew that this was the right fit. And here it is 41 years later. And so you really listen to your gut and not try to fight your gut. And as far as connections, nowadays it is. You got with Bucknell, and just take advantages of all the connections that you have. But yes, you do have to really kind of understand not only what you want, but what you don't want, because that might get you to where you want to go faster.
Thank you. That's good advice. That's great advice. I think that's all the questions that I have. I don't want to take too much time. So I pass it along to Coach.
Thanks, Marwan. So to end it, and once again, I'm going to reiterate that you guys are probably my favorite group. So it's been a blast having you here. But I'm halfway through our 5th season, and obviously this is a unique season, but hopefully come spring, we get back to a little bit more of a sense of normalcy on campus in the tennis community. But I've got a question, and this is actually good because this is right up Chris's alley, since he's dealt with so many high-level Division I coaches. But what advice would you give to me from your experiences at Bucknell to carry forward and make this program the best possible? So we're going to start youngest old. So Casey, what would be your advice?
Well, first of all, I like what you're doing. I think you're doing some very innovative things like that paddle. I mean, Bob and I and Alan and I just had lunch yesterday.
That's great.
We're still talking about it.
That's awesome.
And that, I think that, and pulling the alumni and getting alumni support, and not only just financial support, which is always important, but just general support. Maybe I might see a recruit and say, "Have you thought about Bucknell?" And so
Steve
I
just
like,
sent me a recruit, so I appreciate that, Steve, by the way.
oh well, we keep on trying for the
There
team.
you go.
And so I would say that continuing to reach out to us, we enjoy it. I mean, I haven't seen Steve since he left Bucknell. So, I mean, this is just wonderful, and just keep doing that. I think you're doing a great job that way.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Casey. We'll go to Lack.
Oh, we're going in order of,
I mean, we're going to
Reverse order of age.
Yes.
okay, because I'm older than Chris is anyway.
I know.
Anyway,
I'm saving Chris.
Yeah, thanks for all you've done. Thanks for all you've done to reach out, Coach, and I really appreciate it. And I want to say that I think you're doing a wonderful job, and you're doing things in the right direction. To kind of echo and follow up on what we've done and what we've talked about tonight, because you're at a very serious disadvantage recruiting against other schools that have more resources and better facilities and things like that. My recommendation is when you look at the history of Bucknell tennis, the best players coming in were not always the best players going out. And so there's times you've got to look behind the wall and look at someone when they're 16 or 17 years old, and not about where they're at that particular point, but where they could possibly be. And so to examine in your recruiting efforts, work ethic, attitude, the hate to lose. Does the person fit in well with the team? And you're doing a lot of that right now. But I know, for example, and I'll use this, when I used to coach Little League, when my son was playing, I drafted kids not according to ability, but kids that just loved to compete and they hated to lose, because I knew I could teach them. And I think you can teach them, and you're going to see your kids that develop, because all of a sudden they come to Bucknell and they get stronger, and all of a sudden the team atmosphere, they start to flourish to flourish. And so it's a matter, especially in your situation, where you've got to find the diamonds in the rough that maybe other schools aren't looking at, that you can look at them, and with the right attitude and the right desire and everything else like that, and physical talent, even if they're not great tennis players, that in 2, 3, 4 years, you can mold them into the type of players that you want to have in your program, and rely on your team and the camaraderie and the teamwork to help and work with them, and to, even if they weren't quite there, obviously, when they set foot on campus.
No, that's great advice, Jim. Thanks. We'll go to Chris now. Bob.
Thanks, Bruce. First and foremost, you're the first Bucknell coach since I left that I ever met. And that to me is something. You've reached out to all of us, and that in itself will help the program. As you know, I do a lot of college officiating. I probably know 30 or 40 of the top 80 coaches in terms of their rankings extremely well. But they're not so much coaches as they are managers. They have top players the minute they step on the court. They have to keep them focused and motivated and all that. But you, at your level, have to develop develop players once they arrive. Don't hesitate to go more international. That, unfortunately, is the way tennis is going. We have our top teams in San Diego haven't had an American in decades. This is the hotbed of tennis in San Diego. We get an exceptional kid, and he'll go to UCLA or Cal or Stanford. But it seems that the international kids have more savvy, more motivated, more grateful for the experience, if you know what I mean there.
Yep.
They don't take it for granted that this is the way it is. They're grateful.
Mhm.
They're more grateful for the opportunity. Bucknell's a lovely school, academically one of the top schools, which may not, of course, help the tennis program in terms of recruiting. But again, you're doing about what you can do, given the financial resources. I don't know if I should share this with the group, but I believe you told me you were the least funded sport at Bucknell. That's a tough situation.
That is correct.
You told me Colgate has 3 times the endowment for tennis.
Yes.
You don't have indoor tennis. Heck, would I go to Lewisburg now with the weather you have and not have indoor tennis? I don't know. That's a tough recruit. You said Lehigh's got indoor courts. I hope Todd's listening to all this too. But anyway, you're doing about as well as you can. You need a rainmaker, somebody who cuts a $5 million check, and then you'll be in the top 50, like my friend Eric Stottlemyre at UC Davis has become.
Yes.
Money talks. It helps.
Well,
The facilities are at best average from what I've seen on camera.
We could have what UC Santa Barbara has. Have you seen their new facility they're building, or just broke ground on? $5.8 million. Yeah.
I know Marty Davis very well, and his program has improved with the facility, you might say.
Right.
Have you ever seen Oklahoma State?
No, I have not.
That is a Taj Mahal.
Yeah, I've heard that.
That can put any place to shame. But anyway, Bucknell will probably never be top 25. It doesn't want to be. It doesn't probably, shall we say, need to be there. But you want nice kids, competitive, who will improve, and just to enjoy the overall Bucknell experience. Very few kids play pro tennis. I'm astounded how few make a dime in this sport. We have a kid in San Diego who's the number 1 at UCLA, Smith. You probably know him, Keegan Smith.
Keegan
you know the
Smith.
name?
Yep.
He's 6'7". I mean, how can he miss? But he's going to miss. I don't think he's going to make it.
Right.
He's ranked about 300, which is no man's land. You got to be in the top 150 to make money now. And even that's improved drastically over the years. It used to be had to be in the top 50 or 75. It's really hard to play tennis. So Bucknell, with its academics, is an allure for the kid who doesn't have pro potential. The problem lies in that every 17 or 18-year-old kid thinks he has pro potential. I think that's a gimme.
Right.
I've tried to help you. It's hard from California. The kids don't want to leave. It's very hard to get them to go more than 50 yards from their house their whole life. But I think, I mean, that's the reality.
Right.
But I'll keep trying. I think the fact that you come out here helps the exposure of the program. I'd love to see you come out to Pacific Coast Doubles, which is held in early March. I know
It's always the
kicked
week
that
before
around.
spring break. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
But the kids would love to play against USC, UCLA, Stanford, Cal, Arizona, the big boys. And you'd be surprised. These kids aren't that much better.
Yeah.
They really aren't.
Marwan, how much class did you miss last year for tennis?
None, not one class.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
We
easy.
want to talk about some of these other kids and how
Yeah, exactly.
infrequently they ever go to class.
Yeah.
They play circuit events on
Yeah.
the weekends when they're not playing college tennis. They're semi-pros already.
Yes.
Anyway, all the best, Coach. You're doing a great job.
Thanks, Chris. Let's go to Steve.
Coach, I think you're doing a great job. You certainly have inspired me. I think you're doing a good job in recruiting, which is key. You're doing a good job in fundraising, and it's going to get better. I think you're focused on character and athletic skills, which is very smart. It's tough. I'm not sure that you should focus on the West Coast, Chris, but I think you should figure out where you can really cash in geographically. There may be some places where you're just going to win a lot of the bake-offs for kids that are coming out of some great tennis program areas. And it could be back here on the East Coast, like that kid Henschel that I sent you. That kid, his father played one at Princeton, but nobody knows about him, although Colgate's now noticed it. And he's only a junior, I think, or
He's a junior. Yes.
yeah. But I think these diamond in the roughs that people were talking about. But I'm very excited about the program and what you've been doing for it. And thank you for organizing this. And thank you, Todd. It's a pleasure.
Thanks, Steve. And Alex Anderson.
Well, I'll just reaffirm that I agree with what people have said. And you're the first coach who has reached out to me since I left Bucknell in 1971. And if you were, actually, that's not true. I did get something from Rebecca Holt and the person who worked with her. But in terms of any substantive communication, you're really the first one. But I guess and I think it's presumptuous of me to give you advice. Clearly, you know what you're doing. But the only thing I would add is to just make what you need well known to people who are inclined to help you, so that if you need an extra 15 grand or 20 grand or something like that to do something really special, let us know. And we'll try very hard. I think you have a lot of people here who are very interested in your success and the continuation of the Bucknell men's tennis program. And we'd hate to see it die on the vine. And so let us know what we can do is really my advice.
And I appreciate it. You guys, like I said, this class it's been a fun class. Not only are you guys supportive of the program, but it's been fun to talk to you, because every conversation leads to 11 or 12 really interesting stories that it's fun to hear you guys flash back with. So I appreciate you guys.
All right.
Well, we appreciate you, Coach.
What a great session. So I want to first, in closing, turn my attention to Marwan and thank you for being on the call tonight. Wish you the best of luck with the rest of the semester. We're closing it down. We're almost done. The students have done a great job getting through this semester the way they have. And then keep our fingers crossed that come this spring, you're on the courts behind me and you're playing competitive tennis in the Patriot League and kicking some butt. We're all going to be cheering for you and hoping that's the case. So let's hope so. And then to the alums, thanks so much for what you did. not only while you were here as Bucknell tennis players and what you did to represent the program, the athletic department, and the university as one of the all-time greatest decades of tennis ever at Bucknell, if not the greatest, but also, and this is what a lot of you have pointed to, what you've done since you left Bucknell. And Bob, yes, I was listening, and we don't have any athletic facility at Bucknell that isn't built or completed without the support of our alumni. The institution prioritizes academics, as we all know it should and always will, but we are very fortunate that we have the alumni base that we do and that they are as supportive as you guys all are, because the tennis program would not be what it is without the support you give. So I thank you very much for that. And then for those of you that tuned in tonight to watch us at home, thanks for doing so, and go Bison.